All right, welcome to today's live stream. Let's see. I don't know if you can hear the rain outside and the crickets. I'm in my new studio space, and still got to do something about those crickets to help them quiet down. Today I was wanting to do a little bit of work on this sculpture that I started, this father and son sculpture. So that's what I'm going to be working on. And you ever have those days where you just struggle finding motivation to get working on something you know you should be working on? And so that was kind of what's going on today. I'm just struggling getting the motivation. But I figured if I did a live stream, then kind of forces me to get some sculpting done. I found the same thing with like workouts. Like if I'm exercising, then if I say, oh, I'm going to record this workout, even if I never post it, I end up working harder because I think, oh, if somebody was to see this, I would want it to show them that I could actually work hard. Let's see, I need a place to put the references. Let me grab something to... I want to try to do this primarily by hand. And eventually I'd like to make a mold and cast this in another material. This is sculpting wax, so I could put plaster around it and then sculpt it, or use some sort of plaster to cover this wax, and then I can melt the wax out and cast it in something else. So we'll see if I end up doing that. Somebody says, hi, I recently started sculpting. I have a lot of experience drawing and painting, but I thought it would be very useful. Any recommendations? Yeah, if you'd like to learn sculpting, there's a free PDF that I have that has a bunch of sculpting lessons from the Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course that I teach over at Proko.com. And I try to put a link to that in all my videos. I think it's also linked in my live streams, and so that free PDF just has links, so you don't have to like go through all the lessons or anything, but if there's anything that you're like, oh, I'd like to know how to make a wire armature, or I'd like to like understand the rib cage, or the how to do the head, or anything like that, the Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course is kind of a basics course for anybody learning or wanting to learn traditional clay sculpting. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you're just thinking, oh, I'd like to do this a little bit more and have some guided videos. And I formed that PDF in kind of a checklist, so you can, it's like an assignment checklist you can go through, and as you do the assignments you can check it off, and should be really helpful for anybody, and it's free. Obviously there's you can purchase the full course if you're like, oh yeah, I like this and I think it's worth investing more time and energy into. Then you can get the full course, which has additional lessons and demos and 3D models and things like that. But if you're just starting out and if you don't know how much time or energy you're ready to devote to it, then I recommend just starting off with the free stuff and taking advantage of that. I guess I shouldn't say that. I recommend the premium, because that'll, that's how I get paid. But yeah, that should be a helpful resource for anybody that's interested. Somebody's asking, hello, roughly what size is this piece? I'd say it's probably about, what is that, 5 inches, 6 inches, so like 10 centimeters for the metric system. I don't know, this is a normal sized butter knife, so it's not huge. It's I have a measuring tape, but I'd have to get up to get it, so I guess we'll never know. Maravilloso, somebody says. Gracias. Marvelous. Cuán asombroso es. Cuán asombroso es que por amarme así muriera él por mí. There's a church hymn that talks about that. Cuán asombroso es lo que dio por mí. What device are you using for the reference photos? It's just my phone. It's an old iPhone. It's like the iPhone 8. I think they have double this now, but it's the phone that I have and I'll use until it stops working. And then I just have a video of me turning around slowly with my son. That's the reference. And then I can kind of scroll back and forth in the video to get whatever angle I'm working on. Though he moves around quite a bit, so some angles aren't as helpful. It'd be ideal if it was like I've seen people set up like cameras, 360 cameras all the way around, and they're able to get like photos of an instant from many angles, and then you can switch back and forth from those. That would be nice, but this works pretty well too, and it's a lot more feasible for most people. Just taking a video of yourself or somebody else as a reference, turning around slowly to try to get visual information from a bunch of different angles. Cuán asombroso es que por amarme así muriera él por mí. Cuán asombroso es lo que dio por mí. So I stand all amazed in English. I don't know what is it. Asombro me da in in Spanish. It's a good song. Good hymn. Our baked, let's see. Are baked polymer clays suitable for museum quality pieces as a single one-off? Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, whatever material you have available, and a lot of the museum pieces nowadays, it was just sculptors using the materials they had available. A lot of times that was like lacquer. They would do lacquer casts, or sometimes it's still in the original clay. So, like, what could be in a museum that's, whatever they decide they want to put in it. I've done commissions with polymer clay, and it holds up pretty good. The firm clay, I think, hardens a little bit harder, and then if you finish it with some lacquer or paint it or some shellac or something like that, then it can give it more of a hard shell that's a little bit more durable. So you might consider doing that if you're worried about the durability of it. Do you use an app to make it not fade out and go to sleep? Oh, I think I just program like how long it takes for the phone to turn off, and I've increased that time by quite a bit so that I can do things like this where I'm using the reference to. And I think once this is, I'm not gonna go like super detailed with this. Pretty much, I'm just gonna get as detailed as I can get by hand, which is, just kind of spreading around pieces of clay. So it's not gonna be perfectly lifelike, but then once I feel like it's a good sketch, I do want to try the process of covering it with plaster and then melting out the wax and then casting it in maybe a polyurethane or in cement or something like that, and just see how it casts as a one-of-a-kind kind of maquette idea concept for a future sculpture. Maybe something that I might do as a commission piece in stone or something like that. Though that would be pretty expensive. I'd have to have a wealthy donor or a wealthy patron to be able to justify doing something like that. Well, maybe not. Maybe I could find a piece of stone and just travel to the Sylacauga Stone Sculpting Festival again. If I was able to find a big piece there, then that would be nice. Oh my goodness, I see a little chipmunk in here. That's very cool. But it ran off, so I don't think I'll be able to. Yeah, he's like, oh, there's somebody in here. I'm not gonna bother with it. I like that little face, how that's coming on. Children's el amor que me da Jesús. Confuso estoy por su gracia y por su luz tiemblo al ver que por mí él su vida dio. Por mí tan indigno, su sangre él derramó. That's something I would like to do, is get better at singing. The only way you can do it is by singing. But nobody wants to hear somebody practice singing, I guess. Somebody's asking, what is your most successful vehicle for promoting yourself and selling your work? Well, I mean, because I teach online, which is a little bit different than most artists. So YouTube is probably the most, where I've gotten the most traction and sold the most courses of teaching people how to sculpt. The sculpture show that I really like is in Loveland, Colorado, Sculpture in the Park. That one's, I've heard it's the best show in the U.S. It's a really good sculpting show, and it's juried, so you have to apply for it and see if you get in. But if you get in, it's a pretty good show to be a part of, and I've always made a couple $1,000s whenever I've done that. But it's it's once a year, and it's by no means a large chunk of, or it's not where a majority of my income comes from, though I'd like to grow that. I haven't reached out to galleries probably as much as I should. I should try to play the gallery game and do those things. But maybe I'm just too interested in teaching, so maybe I've devoted a little bit too much time to that. If I wanted to be more successful as somebody that's selling their work, I should probably focus more on that. So yeah, I'd say YouTube. YouTube, you're able to build more of a relationship with people as they're watching your videos. It's a little bit longer form, which I think is good for selling work. And so if you don't have a YouTube channel as an artist, I'd start one. Instagram's also good and a common place where artists can show off their work. But I'd say YouTube is probably the platform that I've found the most useful. What are your thoughts on 3D printed pieces being sold as art? Well, I'm fine with it. I think, there's always going to be new technology, and artists are always going to try to take advantage of that. But I think there's always going to be a place for more traditional forms of art, and people will recognize that those traditional forms, especially the ones that are more labor intensive, like physical sculpting, require more physical work, and therefore they're going to be valued a little bit higher. Yeah, I'm fine with it. I haven't got into it myself personally because I just like working with traditional materials, kind of conservative that way. That I prefer, clay, even though I guess sculpting wax, this is a new product, but people have been sculpting with types of waxes and types of clays for as long as mankind has existed. So I do like that traditional element personally. And if I was going to purchase art, I would personally try to gravitate towards traditionally created art. So I'd say that there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to like the AI stuff, I think there is going to be an issue with people claiming, that it's traditional art, but it's actually artificial intelligence, which I think is a problem with honesty. If people are required to say what things were created with or when they used AI as part of the creation process, I think that should be required to disclose, because that does changes the consideration when valuing a work of art. If it actually had a human touch, or if it was just kind of a digital conglomeration of various different previous artworks that were created by people, like AI, how AI does it. But I think as long as people are honest about it, then people will recognize the value of work done by artists versus work that's just created by a computer. I think we'll just kind of recognize the difference in value and in effort and what it takes to make it. I think being able to see these videos online is really important. People can see what goes into something handmade. Yeah, I think that's why it's good to have a YouTube channel or some sort of documentation process for your artwork, because I guess pretty soon you'll be able to fake that as well, but for the most part it's kind of difficult to, or right now it's difficult to fake hours and hours of people sculpting and working on projects. And Hi, hello. Good evening, Andrew says, for somebody that it's evening. For me, it's just afternoon, but good evening to you and good morning to those where it's morning. Probably got people watching from all different time zones, which is a cool thing. It never ceases to amaze me. That technology is advanced to the point where we can watch something that's happening on the other side of the world instantaneously. Pretty crazy. It's getting pretty close to where I'd call it, let's move that ear down a little bit. Where I might call it good. Again, this is just going to be like a rough kind of sculpture sketch, maquette, concept sketch that I might present to a patron and ask them for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get me to do it life size in stone or something like that. Maybe $100,000 for something like this. Realistic in stone. That's just pocket change for some people. Just got to find those people is the trick. And convince them that you're the artist to bring that vision to life. Great artists through history had patrons that they were able to find and convince to support their work. I guess that's not always true. There were some artists that lived destitute and died destitute, and now we appreciate their work. But the artists that were great in their time usually were able to find patron families. I think that neck is too long. How can I fix that? Oh, that's my... Hello?
How long is the quiet time?
It should be good now. Hey, Jemos. Did James wake up?
No? He was not sleeping at all.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Do you want me to come in or no? Not yet. I'm doing
I
a...
just wanted to see if the kids could be done.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Did they do some reading time?
Yes.
Okay, yep. Sounds good. I'm doing a live stream right now, so I'll, let me know when... Hey, Jemos. Okay, we'll see ya. Bye. Somebody else is asking about the 360 setup on the camera. I just filmed a video of myself as the reference, and then I'm just scrolling through the video on my iPhone. So it's just pictures or whatever, the photo app. It's nothing special, just a video of me turning around for the reference. This will be one of my favorite sculptures of yours because of the symbolism. Yeah, I hope to maybe turn it into a stone sculpture at some point. We'll have to see when or how that happens. Maybe this could be the design for next year's. Silicaga marble sculpture. Yeah, I really like this one, this design as well. I'd like to do a series of sculptures based on fatherhood, motherhood, family, having children. I think that's something that's really important. Something that we're starting to lose in society is the value of children, having children, and people are having less children or deciding not to have children at all. So we really need to those of us that value children really need to create works. Well, create children ourselves, but then also create content and artworks that celebrate the beauty and I guess virtue and blessings of parenthood. It's the best thing I've done. My children are the best part of my life. Highly recommend it. On the base, it's leaning back maybe a little bit too much. I can't remember if I put a nail in here. No, I don't think I did. So I'm just gonna move this. That's easy. It's maybe a little bit too much. Oh, that was maybe too much. Pushed it too much the other way. I want it leaning back slightly, but not that much. He says, I'm a father of 2 young men. I've recently switched to art from computer animation. I hope to do many paintings of my boys. That's great. Children are a blessing that people are starting to take for granted. That's for sure. Somebody else says, I feel that the world we live in right now is totally insane. It's hard to want to have children nowadays, I feel. Well, if you think that, you're wrong. There's been crazier times and there's been more difficult times. So saying, oh, this world's too crazy to bring children into, well, it's not a crazier time than, when the Black Plague was going around and your children were, half of all children that were conceived died from some sort of illness or disease. It's not that crazy. So it's just crazy in a different way, but life's always crazy. So I'd say don't give in to the excuses that society gives of why not to have children. There's always going to be reasons why not to do something that's difficult and that increases the amount of responsibility you have. But if you pass up on that, then you're passing up on one of the things that brings you the most joy, the most fulfillment, the most meaning in your life, and it's a really sad thing to live life without living without. I mean, even if you're an atheist, which I'm not, if you're purely Darwinist, you believe in evolution, like even in that framework, having children, reproducing, is would be one of the primary purposes of existence. Now, I believe that we are created, and therefore, we have a Father in heaven who's God, who created us, and that families are ordained of God, and that God wants us to have children because that's what He did, and we are His children. He would like us to have our own children and to see those as a blessing, as it talks about in the Bible. So I believe those things. But even if you didn't, you should still see parenthood and continuing your own bloodline as something that's worthwhile. If you don't have that perspective, well, then you'll become extinct. And those that believe that philosophy of anti-human, anti-natalist, or those that are against having children, they'll just make themselves extinct in one generation. Doesn't take a lot. And those of us who believe in the sanctity of life and family will pass on our belief to our children, and will raise the next generations. So our worldview will win out eventually, though it'll make it does make it difficult when the society doesn't have those same values. But the world is kind of crazy. That's why you instill your values to your kids. That's why you homeschool, if you can, so that the world has less of an influence on your family and you have more. Once I get to the point where I feel like I'm making it worse instead of better, I might be getting to that point. Then I'll go ahead and stop and make a mold and cast it. I think that point is coming up pretty soon. Okay, I think I'll leave it there for now. I think that's getting to a point where, as a sketch, as a sculpture sketch, it's getting the idea across. If I was going to turn this into a stone sculpture, then I'd probably take a mold and cast this and then do a larger version in clay to kind of solidify all the details. And, you know, maybe that larger version could also be cast in other materials. I'd probably make a mold of that. Maybe I'll make a mold of this one just so that I can have the option to sell these or casts of this design, because I like it. And then I would take that reference and then use it as a maquette or a small model to do it in stone. And I'm working on a stone sculpting course, so that is in the works. It's a lot of work to build a course, so it'll still be a while before that course comes out. But in the meantime, I hope you'll check out my Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course, which is a great place to start. And then there's the Portrait Sculpting course. It's a little bit more advanced, goes into anatomy and those types of things. And then there's the Hand Sculpting course. So if any of those sound interesting, I hope you'll check those out. There's also free PDFs for the Figure Sculpting course and the Portrait Sculpting course to get you started with the free content, and you can use that as an assignment checklist. And I hope you take advantage of those, because I put a lot of work into creating those free resources. And I hope it helps you sculpt better. All right, stay creative, stay productive. Hopefully I'll see you guys soon in another video.